I'm Danny with Blizzplanet, and I'm here to interview Jeremy Feasel on the World of Warcraft team. So, Jeremy, why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do on the WoW team, and how's your Blizzcon going so far?
Sure. BlizzCon is always great. We get super energized by the fans being here. It's kind of my chance to recharge my energy packs for the year. So I've worked really heavily on this expansion with the Islands feature, World Quests. I worked a lot with World Quests in the last expansion as well. And as always, pet battles.
Why don't you elaborate a little bit on the island features? I saw a little bit of the panel yesterday. It would be cool if you could talk about it for a minute.
Islands is really our opportunity to play around with the idea of coming to a different land every time you land there. We put a whole lot of work into the technology that allows us to, at the top end, before you land on the island, tell a story. Who lives here? You might show up on an island with primitive huts, and we have a whole lot of creatures that can show up at primitive huts in various different configurations. They have a bunch of different bosses that can show up in different configurations, different groupings, different difficulties, different amounts of Azeroth or different consumables that they're fighting over. And really this kind of gets to the heart of old school roguelikes, where as you're making your way through the space, you have a puzzle in front of you. Do you take over the capture point up at the top of the hill that gets you access to a couple of powerful cannons, that gets you an extra button that allows you to cannon fire things as you make your way across the rest of the island? And then when you see that the next time, it's probably in a different spot. But you know what it does, and you know how it can help you in the rest of the space, and that will change up how you strategically play your way through that island. But the important thing is here that it doesn't use our traditional spawning where you usually see the same creature in the same location. In fact, we sort of mark up the world with how it exists. This is a seafaring location, this is a primitive hut location, and then just about anything can show up there, and that means that we don't even know what kind of experience you'll have. Of course, we have tools that can tune that so it's not going to be a bad one, but it means that playing your way through this space always feels a little bit different, and you're not quite sure what's going to be in that cave the next time you go in there.
Sounds awesome. Can you talk a little about the leveling flow? 3 levels per zone. How is that going to work? You know, obviously there's 10 levels. Can you speak on that a little bit?
So we have 3 zones for each of the different factions, and then leveling will be split by each of those 3 zones. During the course of your leveling up, you will also be starting on your war campaign, which is a meta storyline that kind of overarches the whole expansion pack, that includes you heading to the other continent and starting to explore there. You'll go to your first island. It's our opportunity to play into the Alliance v Horde elements and for you to start building up things for your particular faction. So similar to Legion, you will have the interstitial, like major story quest beats that'll be showing up in between your individual zones as your leveling is spread across those zones.
Got it. So I think that leads me to the next question about, so in Legion we had the Pillars of Creation, which is kind of like the overall thing to unlock, you know, Tomb of Sargeras. So is there some kind of similar overall like hook throughout the, you know, questing experience in Battle for Azeroth?
And that kind of gets to a little bit of that meta questing line. You saw a similar thing with Illidan's quest line, that it went throughout the course of the entire expansion, and it carried with it certain story elements that integrated themselves here and there. You're going to be seeing the same thing with a lot of our new major characters in Battle for Azeroth. You're going to be seeing the next development in Anduin and Jaina and Sylvanas and Thrall and even Vol'jin, and how their stories are playing out on both of the continents. So it's really going to give you that feeling of building them up as characters, is telling the next part of their story and the next portion of the story of the faction war as you progress through all the different zones of the expansion.
Got it. So you briefly mentioned Illidan, and we've heard that we're not done with Illidan. Is that something they're going to be wrapping up in Legion, or can we expect some Illidan, you know, in Battle for Azeroth?
I'm not going to give you any spoilers here, but the end of the battle for Antorus, which is still to come for players, and especially the finale cinematic you're going to see at the end of that, is absolutely bonkers. It's going to answer all your questions. It's going to bring up a whole lot more questions, I hope. Can't wait to see that in your hands. And I'm not going to spoil it for you here.
That's fine. I don't want spoilers anyway. So, let's see. Well, okay, so they mentioned the burning of Teldrassil and assault on Undercity. Even potentially a Horde-only Kalimdor and Alliance-only Eastern Kingdoms. So what does that kind of mean for the existing Night Elf and undead cities. Is there anything you can talk about on that?
Sure. So, similar to our storybooking of other quests that you've seen in World of Warcraft, you can still level up in Initial Night Elf. You'll still start in Teldrassil. And the same thing with Horde starting in Transmog Sets. You can go in Undercity. Once you get to that point in the story, that's when the story changes. Once you hit max level and you go through the story experience, then the world is forever changed for you. So you're in sort of that new phased version of the world where Teldrassil is on fire and Undercity is taken by the Horde. And then where we go from there, you'll have to see in the expansion pack.
Sounds good. I think our camera actually died, so we don't need to use this mic anymore. Let's see. The blood trolls of Nazmi kind of have a Hakar vibe to them. Are there any relation to the Loa? Any relation, and what Loa do they serve?
Oh, that's a very good question. So, did you play the experience on the floor?
I haven't gotten to play it yet, no.
So, not to spoil a huge amount for you, Bwansamdi, the Loa of Death, plays a major role in that zone, and you will meet him for the first time and see what he's all about. But really, these blood trolls are under the servitude of a powerful new creature that you'll meet in the very first raid of this expansion. So there's a facility in Nazmir where the Titans were doing experiments on old gods. They were trying to solve the old god problem. Okay. And you can imagine when you start experimenting on an old god, really bad stuff has the potential to happen. So what they ended up creating was something far worse. Okay. In this new sort of blood god who you're going to see eventually. And not to spoil a huge amount for you, but this facility only has one of the 3 seals remaining on it.
Oh, okay.
And during the course of the expansion, you're going to find out what happens to that last seal.
Got it. What are the dark forces invading Stormsong Valley, and what's going on there in general?
So we're not quite ready to go super deep into the story of Stormsong Valley. What I can tell you is that they have long had this history of the sea priests that you saw yesterday who bless the ships that head out to sea, and they have a special kind of sea priest magic that is really in tune with the waves and in fighting by using sort of wave powers and stuff like that. And it's not quite elemental shamany, it's more on the sea blessing sort of side of things. Okay. And then it's that group where you find that there is an insidious force that is taking over from within and creating even worse creatures. That I'm not going to tell you what they are.
All right.
But you're going to find out.
That's fine. The Drustvar video showed witches and spirit golems. Who are these enemies, and do they serve the void?
The Drustvar witches. Super really interesting story with these guys that you'll go into during the Drustvar experience. Long time ago, there was a group called the Drust people that lived in Drustvar. And when that area was overtaken by humans, they slew the Drust. And the Drust were a large, hardy kind of people. But the Drust didn't leave. They exist as spirits that live in the area, in the Death Realm, and have been slowly trying to work their way back into our world. They've made a pact with the leader of that zone, Lady Waycrest, and ultimately, because of all the political intrigue going on between the 4 different houses in Koltiris, she decided to accept their help in exchange for the ability to have a stronger seat on that council and more political power.
Okay.
And as you can imagine, if you accept the help of some spirits that are just out for vengeance against your people, very bad stuff happens.
Yeah,
so we won't go too much into detail with that.
That's good, though. That's good.
But it really gets into that vibe of creepy witches, of these macabre figurines that they infuse with the souls of others to act as their minions. And one of the things that you saw on screen yesterday was this creepy-looking banshee creature, right?
Yep.
So when dressed witches get up to the point where they're ready to ascend, they accept the Death Realm's advice and slit their own throats and become an ultra-powerful witch that has completely lost their mind.
So do they serve the void or anything, or is that totally
You're going to have to find out.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. Can you talk a little bit about Warfronts and what kind of rewards we can expect from Warfronts?
So both Warfronts, Islands, really, with regards to reward scheme, we're not quite ready to completely nail down anything yet.
Okay.
But what we can tell you is we feel like we learned a huge amount from the different systems that we put into Legion. World quests, mythic pluses, raids, and dungeons all felt like, and PvP, all felt like they had their place in the reward scheme in the endgame. We made sure that we had different axes of rewards for each of these things so that you would continue playing a wide variety of different content in the endgame. You wouldn't feel like you were locked out of a particular kind of content.
Right.
We feel like Islands and Warfronts both fit within that scheme of things that we want you to continue playing throughout the entirety of the expansion pack, and we'll have cool and unique rewards associated with them, but also evergreen reward schemes. Like, for example, Islands is one of your greatest sources of Azerite. It's something you're going to want to continue to do every time Islands are up, kind of thing. Or not Islands, but it's something you're going to want to continue to do during the course of the expansion pack.
Gotcha. Let's see. Are there any plans for battlegrounds and arenas centered in Stormwind or Orgrimmar?
Not currently. We have 2 arenas that are centered around the 2 new continents, and then, of course, the new Silithus-based battleground.
Gotcha. Oh, back on the Warfronts. So you guys announced Stromgarde. That's not the only Warfront, though, right? There's going to be more. I think there was some confusion on that. So
currently, Stromgarde is the Warfront that we're working on finalizing for this particular expansion pack. We don't have much else to say beyond that, other than that we're working very hard at making it an awesome experience. Can't wait to get it in people's hands and see how they feel about it. We feel it's in a system that is definitely expandable. Like, you can probably think of a couple locations right now where you're like, wow, that'd be a really cool Warfront. Like, I'd love to fight in this particular location and knock this race out of this particular continent. Wouldn't that be rad? We feel the same way. We feel like it's an awesome system to build on. One of the things we are focusing on with this particular Warfront, though, is making sure that every time you come into the Warfront, it feels like a little bit different of an experience. You're facing off against different enemy commanders that have different troops that they will send out against you. They'll take different tech tree paths in their own base, so you'll be facing off against different stuff. And also, during the middle of Warfronts, various events happen. In one Warfront, you might have a goblin vendor show up that is willing to sell to both sides, like the goblins sometimes do, that will give you a couple of powerful consumables to use in that Warfront. While in another Warfront, you might go in, and Jaina shows up all of a sudden and says, everybody to me, and all 20 of your players run out and join Jaina to take over a particular point of that Warfront before she has to take off for her next meeting.
Oh, that's cool. That sounds cool.
Yeah, so we want to have all these different crazy cool events that feel like you feel awesome for being a part of this faction, use those faction heroes that we're building up in this expansion.
So then the plan is just the one for this expansion, and then see how it works out if we go further, or I guess it's unknown at this point.
Unknown at this point, we'll see.
Okay, cool. With the introduction of the 6 sub-races, are more coming, and are we going to increase the amount of characters per server?
Yes, so we will be increasing your character slots. We're not quite ready to nail down what that number is yet, but we recognize that you don't want to have to delete your characters in order to make all these new awesome allied races. That's for sure. The system, now that we have it in place, is very expandable, and we do plan on adding additional allied races in the future. We would absolutely love to hear from players what they would most like to play as. We've been hearing a lot of this from players for years, and we're super happy to get this feature into their hands, and I know everybody's got a different opinion about what they want to play as. Please tell us. Can't wait to hear what you're super jazzed about.
Do you think we'll see more with it in this expansion, or will that just be more future expansions at this point?
I think we'll have to see at this point. Yeah.
Okay. What kind of customization can players expect with the 6 allied races?
Each of them is being built from the ground up as having their own customization options. In some cases, that means Lightforged tattoos that look really different. Or like for the Dark Iron Dwarves, they have their own beard and hairstyles that have flecks of embers that are flying off of them. Like, there are teams going all out to make it feel like these guys are perfectly customizable versions. Like, the real realization of that subgroup, you don't just have regular dwarven haircuts on these guys. You're a Dark Iron Dwarf, right? You want to feel like it.
Yeah, no, totally. If you play Alliance, obviously you have to do the quest to unlock the Alliance allied races. Well, do you have to do the same thing on the Horde side, or do you unlock both, or how does the unlocking of the allied races work?
It's really intricately tied to the story of that particular faction, so it makes sense to unlock only that particular faction for your side. However, there's 2 or 3 additional things to go along with that. First, when you unlock an allied race, it unlocks for your entire account. And if you transfer that character, it will be unlocked for that new account as well. So you only have to unlock it one time, and then you can character transfer, or you can or faction change one of your other characters over to that new character, although you won't get the Heritage Armor set for doing that. You gotta play from level 20 up, and we're making those really cool, which also, works really well with the changes to the scaling world, so we think it's a lot more fun to level up now that you can complete the story of each zone before moving on to the next one. Along the same lines, though, we did want to note that because a lot of these factions are factions that exist in the game already, like High Mountain Tauren and Lightforged Draenei, you can already begin working towards unlocking those factions. Some of the faction unlock requirements, which haven't been 100% nailed down, but will, of course, include things like finishing up the story of the High Mountain quest line and getting some amount of reputation with them. So you can assume that those are prerequisites and you can start working on them right now.
Well, that gives people, an incentive if they're new to come back and still play some old stuff. I like that. With all this, with the allied races and the customization that we're seeing, do you guys have any plans for more transmog sets of like NPCs? Like, people ask me about Ronin specifically. So any thoughts of having transmog sets unlockable that aren't necessarily just, the standard rewards and whatnot?
That's an interesting question. We're always looking for new sources of transmog, especially now that it's a major system that we put in pretty recently. Yeah. We love to hear what players like about the system and what they'd like to see more of. A couple of examples that have come out of that relatively recently were our change to having holiday-specific transmogs. Okay. So you can wear, your Christmas hat all throughout Christmas holiday. Or Winter Veil, rather. Sorry. Everything's Wi-Fi'd. And the Hollow's End witch hats are another example of that we feel is a really cool way to play around with the transmog system. The Heritage Armor sets also get to that. Once you unlock a Heritage Armor set, it's usable by any different
that's nice.
Armor wearer, because it's a cosmetic armor. So you can transmog it over, plate as well as cloth at the same time. Cool. And we want to continue doing awesome stuff like that. We'd love to hear more things that the community want. Now that we have the system in place, we can always, do more stuff with it. It's all comes down to time, really.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Does the Heart of Azeroth necklace borrow any ideas or tech from the artifact system? And can you tell us a little bit more about the Heart of Azeroth and its purpose?
For sure. So we wanted to solve some of what we perceived were some of the problems with the artifact system. There was a lot we really liked about it, and there was a lot that we wanted to evolve. One of the things we wanted to evolve was having spec-specific artifacts. Felt like you had to choose between leveling your tank or your healer. Because the Heart of Azeroth is one individual item, you don't have to make that choice anymore. You just level up as a character. Okay. If you need to go heal a dungeon, you will continue gaining Azerite that helps you tank later in your raid. We feel like that's an awesome direction to go with this thing. On the same lines, one of the things that we thought was awesome about the artifacts was that it felt like you were making meaningful choices during the leveling experience, and even during the end game. You were continuing to put points into the artifact well beyond hitting max level. Yep. However, you hit a certain point where you were done, and you started putting points in just that one concordance trait, or whatever it was during the course of the 3 different patches where it changed. And we felt like that lost a lot of that goodness of making a lot of cool player choices and having your gameplay change during the course of that experience. You were kind of locked into how your character plays for the rest of the expansion. But what if we didn't have to do that? What if we continued giving awesome choices to make all the time? So that's one of the major purposes of artifact, or of Azerite armor. Everything starts with A. Right. Azeroth, Azerite, everything. Of Azerite armor is that when you're doing your, you did your normal raid and then you're heroic raiding this week, right? Because your guild's gotten good enough. And you pick up a new helmet. And that helmet might have completely different traits and abilities to choose from, and you get to have that moment of making all those choices again. Right. And in some cases, you may choose to go with something a little bit different than the thing you did last time because of how those different items synergize together. Okay. This is also a cool opportunity for us to give you, rather than one artifact with one set of traits, imagine you have 3 different things, and then every once in a while, they will have interesting synergies between them that will incentivize you to go down specific directions. Okay. An example of it, and I'm just completely pulling this out of the air, is imagine that you got a shoulder piece that gives you additional crit on lightning bolt. Okay. And then you get a helm that has a chance to, one of the 3 traits you can pick is a chance when you crit with lightning bolt to shoot an extra red lightning bolt that does extra damage. Gotcha. Right? Yeah. And that would make you think twice about how to synergize between the 2. But then if you got a different shoulder, you might change your helm decision and pick up a new helm that has so you're constantly making choices even throughout the end game, which we think is going to be rad.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. With the way that the scenarios are and kind of how the randomization of those, do you think that we might be able to see some of that in the future with dungeons? And would you guys like to do something like that? more randomization, procedural dungeon type stuff?
This is our first foray into sort of procedurally generated spaces and an adventure that crafts itself right as soon as you pop into the area. I feel like we're going to learn a huge amount from this. We've put a lot of effort into the tech of both that and these brand new advanced NPCs, which also have the opportunity to be both really awesome, unpredictable elements, and then we can also tune them up to the point where they're super rude to play against because they, polymorph your healer and they sap you and then they jump your other character right when they're at low health and stuff like that. There's a huge amount of tuning knobs we have, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing 4 different difficulty settings, is because we realize, that's like a mythic level Sneaky Pete right there. So the technology is massively expandable, and we've built it with the idea of being massively expandable.
Right.
To me at this point, having been working on this particular technology for over a year now, I feel like the sky's the limit with where we could take it. We'll see where islands go. We hope everybody likes that particular feature.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, man.
Ours is a cycle of hatred. Alliances forged and broken. We have paid the price for sharing this world. And we have forgotten what makes us strong.
Close ranks! Advance has won! Lordaeron will be ours! My king, we have her cornered.
Keep firing!
My father once told me that peace was like a dream. Beautiful, ephemeral, unattainable. I didn't listen. No one listened. We've made kindling from our suffering. Stirred the embers of resentment. Just waiting for a single spark to set the whole world aflame. As the Alliance returns to forgotten kingdoms, the Horde seeks the might of an ancient empire. Dream any longer. The time has come to call on allies willing to join the fight, to rally beneath the banners of a world at war.